All right, my name is Russ, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Couch Brotatopodcast. And I've got an awesome episode lined up for you guys and gals today. My good friend Kohl from the Knights of Degradation podcast swings by to talk about his show, the Knights of Degradation podcast. He tells me all about what inspired him to start his show and some of the trials and tribulations on being an independent podcaster while working 40 hours a week and trying to spend time with his family. Also, him and I will give to you the top 5 dream guests that we want on our show, whether they're dead or alive. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, after this guitar riff, we bring to you the Couch Brotato Podcast. And welcome back to the Couch Brotato Podcast. My name is Russ, the master of ceremonies, if you will. And joining me on today's show is the founder, creator, the king of the Knights of Degradation podcast, Kohl. Welcome back to the show, man. How have you been?
Oh, I've been good, man. Thanks for having me.
It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's been over a year, I think, right? Since we've done any sort of crossover or anything.
I think the last time you were on the show was when we did a AEW Double or Nothing review, which was almost a year ago.
Oh, that's right. I remember listening to that and thinking, God, I sound like such a dick. He's not going to have me back on.
Well, no, it's not that. I mean, I've had people that have been far worse, far bigger assholes than that. I'm sure you may have heard the when we had Mark on for the critically panned night or midnight run episode. Yeah, he was a much bigger dick.
Okay. Well, good.
You follow much wrestling lately? I know you were kind of getting out of it for a little bit.
Yeah. So since AEW started, every Dynamite, every Rampage, every pay-per-view. But when I used to watch on Fight TV with a VPN. And they kind of made that a little more difficult to do. And so now I can't really watch live. I have to wait 30 days for the episodes to appear back on Fight TV. And that just kind of soured me. And I was already just getting burnt out, honestly, since the Brawl Out event. I think that I just got a little, I don't know, there's not a better term than burnout, I guess, over it. So I'm just taking a break, maybe 6 months or so, and then I'll hop back in and kind of catch up on what I missed, and hopefully I have a little bit more enthusiasm about it. So I'm still a wrestling fan, I'm just taking a break, that's all. But honestly, the XFL's been on, and I've gotten into that, so I can kind of only have one like entertainment hobby at a time.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, like I can sympathize with CM Punk, where he works with children, and like right in the middle of us talking, my dog is sitting here in his dog bowl just fucking up a bowl of water. Like he has, like we don't feed and like give these dogs water. He's just like tearing into this, and now he's gone. My dogs usually make some kind of appearance on these. It's either one of my dogs is hacking up a lung, or now the other one is in here just killing a bottle or a bowl of water. But I empathize with CM Punk. I know it's like to be frustrated with coworkers, and he has said stuff that I have felt many, many times during my work career. So I get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I know what it's like to work with coworkers that suck, but also making those comments on a live broadcast and then the way it was handled afterwards seemed kind of bad. And like he just won the world title. So I feel like he could have just toned it down a little bit.
I will say that I want to use as my email signature at work is I'm old and I'm tired and I work with fucking children. I want to use that as my signature on my email at work, but they might frown upon that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, be careful, man. Don't talk too bad about your employees. They'll come and kick your door down, and then one of them will bite you in the arm. And
hey, if they want to send me home for 6 months paid, I'm totally cool with that.
But, well, I just read an interview. I guess I didn't like read too deep into it, but apparently there's talks of him coming back. So I don't know how that'll work, but
yeah, he's from what I heard. I was just reading this before you and I hopped on here to do this. He apparently had agreed to terms to come back, and then he had posted something on his Instagram story where he's basically knocking. John Moxley had proposed this Rocky 3 type of storyline. And I think the most shocking thing of all that is CM Punk has never watched a Rocky movie. As a matter of fact, on the show, I do on our Twitter feed, I do a poll question of the day. And right after that came out, I had put, if you were friends with CM Punk and he calls you and says, hey, I finally want to watch a Rocky movie, which one would you recommend to him? And I believe Rocky 4 won that.
That's funny. I saw that and I didn't vote because I've seen the Rockies, but I do not remember any of them. They had like no impact on me. So I was like, I shouldn't vote. I don't really know which one would matter.
Oh, now see, I'm the exact opposite, man. Those movies are my wheelhouse. Like I actually just watched Rocky 4 like a week before all that shit happened. So
that's wild.
Yeah.
I didn't even see the Instagram post. So I don't know if if he's trashing Moxley, that's, and I'm a big Moxley fan, so.
Yeah, he had said something about Moxley, Jericho, and Dave Meltzer, which Dave Meltzer, cool, fair game, man. Dave Meltzer's
yeah, he knows like where he's at. He's fine.
Right.
But I mean, okay, let's just talk crap about the two biggest stars of the company, and I don't know. I don't get why he would do that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But you know what, though? Keep it coming. All this backstage stuff going on between the shit in AEW and then, like, the WWE being on the market for sale. It's given my show plenty of things to talk about. So, like, I try to, like, diversify a little bit. So I'm not focusing on wrestling too much, but man, there's just like, it's so easy when you've got, all this backstage stuff coming in the public.
Like, yeah, it sucks because you don't know how much of it's manufactured. I think that's another thing I got sick of. Like, I remember last year, like towards the end of last year, the members of the House of Black just wanted to take a break for like a few weeks. And so now there's all these things about like, oh, they're unhappy and they're going to WWE and they're turning their backs on the company that helped them and stuff. And I was like, they just want, like, I think Black actually released a video and was just like, hey, I just took time off, like, chill, So I think that's part of my burnout too, is just all of this drama and you never know what's real and what's the phrase, like working yourself into a shoot. Mm-hmm. I was doing that a lot, so.
Yeah. But hey, you know what though? Like I'm totally cool with it. Sometimes when I've always found that the backstage stuff is just as fascinating as the stuff on TV. Just simply because like it seems like it's more of a soap opera behind the scenes than it is when the cameras are rolling. So
right. I was talking to Mercedes, one of the last ones we watched, and I was like, man, it's like a fucking high school that puts on a play once a week, but then you got to deal with all the high school drama, backstage. Mm-hmm. So I get it because you just have that really wherever you work or most places where you work, and it's just just so happens that where they work we see them every week, and they're celebrities, quote unquote celebrities. So
yeah,
all the stuff they do is under a microscope. I mean, if I like kicked my employees, if I went and got in a fight with my employees or my coworkers and bit one of them, it wouldn't make the news. I would just get fired. So,
well, not necessarily. I've done that before. It actually happened when I worked at the Big Blue electronics retailer. I actually bit one of my managers, and they sent me home for the day.
Oh, well.
No, that actually didn't happen. I totally made that story up.
See, I believed it. That's why I can't read the dirt sheets.
I only look like a rabid dog. I'm not a rabid dog. I only just look like one.
I disagree. I spend all day around rabid dogs. You're a handsome man.
Oh, well, flattery on this show will get you everywhere.
All right.
So how's the podcast going, man? I know you guys have been on a hiatus for a little bit. So what's going on with that? Before you go into that, for those that are kind of new to the show, let everybody know exactly what the Knights of Degradation podcast is and where they can hear it.
Yeah, so the Knights of Degradation podcast is the first first production or product or whatever you call from Soldier Bear Studios, which is the LLC or the company that I run or that me and John run. And basically it's a Dungeons and Dragons tabletop role playing, like actual play podcast. So we sit around and we play D&D, and then we record it, and then I edit it to make it seem more like an audio drama. I take out a lot of the dead air and a lot of the out of game talk, and it's just more about the narrative. It's really character focused and story focused, and it's so much fun. It's amazing. I mean, it's the kind of stuff I like doing in high school, but it just feels it's on a more professional level, and it's been great. It's been going pretty good. Our numbers were great. People, we had quite a big fan base, but we keep having these really long breaks. And I was telling Mercedes the other day, I don't even feel like an independent podcaster. I don't feel like an indie podcaster. I feel like I'm a guerrilla podcaster. Like I'm coming out of the bushes and podcasting for a couple months, and then I'm going back in and I'm waiting another year before I start again. But we got our studio, which has really helped out, and now we have a pretty good plan for how we're going to record, and we're going to do it more in seasons. So like we just wrapped up recording season 1, and John actually helped me figure out, because I was doing all the editing and it was taking me like 2 weeks to edit one episode, and John helped me out, and then I did some stuff on my own. Now I'm editing an entire episode in about 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty awesome. So it's definitely moving along pretty quick. So all of April's episodes were coming back in April. All of their episodes are already up. I'll have all of May's up probably by the end of next week. So
okay,
it's pretty good. I think we geared up and started coming back, and then I don't know if you saw all that stuff that happened with Wizards of the Coast, what they were doing to like independent creators, basically trying to steal from them, and that just really put us off. So we talked about that for a while to figure out how to navigate through that and what to do with that.
So I didn't know that there was a kind of a big controversy in that world. What was that all about?
There's a lot of stuff to it, but and I'll be honest, I'm not a very smart person, but from what I understood,
Well, that makes two of us. That's why we do podcasting for free.
Yeah. Well, simply, Wizard of the Coast released a statement that said they're updating their open gaming license. But right now, anyone's allowed to use Dungeons and Dragons and basically everything inside of it. So the monsters they create, the classes, the worlds and stuff, you're allowed to use that stuff for like podcasts. You're allowed to make extra content for it. You put it up on Kickstarter or sell your books about it. Well, they released something basically saying that, yeah, you can still do that, but you're going to have to pay us money. You're going to have to show us like financial records and stuff. And then hidden in there was a little clause that said they can actually take any property, anything you make with their property, and they can decide that they want to use that, and then you're not allowed to use it anymore. And it actually had a thing in there to where you can't take legal action against them. So our characters are Cavagal, Barlow, and Griff. That's who the characters play. If we kept going like that, Wizards could just say, hey, we like those characters. We're going to take them and put them in an official book. We're not going to give you any money, and you can't do anything about it, and you can't use them anymore, which was beyond shitty. And so many people got upset, and they made this big uproar. And at first they tried to like gaslight everybody and say, no, we're doing good stuff. This is good. You're just haters and racist and all this stuff. And then people kept being pissed off, so they totally walked it back, and they made everything basically public domain, except for a few specific stuff. So they walked it back, and everything's fine now. It's actually easier to be a creator now, but I just hate that they did that. And I have a really hard time using a product from a business that does something what I find to be like really immoral and unethical. So I don't know. We haven't announced this like in our show yet. We're waiting until the end of the first season because it was already mostly recorded as this was happening or before this happened. But for season 2, we're not going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons anymore. We're going to be playing a whole different system, and we're not going to be doing anything involving Wizards of the Coast because man, if they try to do that once, they're just going to try to do it again later, And above all else, as a creator, like if you create something, it's yours, and no one has the right to steal it. And the fact that they tried to do that just pissed me off. So that kind of set us back a little bit because we didn't know what to do. We talked about just stopping altogether, but I really like what we've built, and I think we've built one of the coolest worlds and characters and stuff. And I didn't want to just give that up because some company was being shitty.
Yeah. Yeah, that blows my mind that like there's that kind of drama in that world, you know?
Yeah, well, Wizards is owned by Hasbro.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, so that kind of tells you right there. And it's funny because like the people in charge of D&D just have no idea what they're doing, and most of them haven't even played D&D for that long. And the person, I forget the lady's name, but the person they put in charge of it, she actually, her entire background is in monetization in video games, like how to increase microtransactions and how to get more money out of video games. So when she came over, it was like a really bad sign anyways. So we don't know exactly what system we're going with. We even talked about making our own, but we're just going to switch it up and just go from there. And then I think that's better because it makes us our own even more, if that makes sense. It makes us more unique.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the movie coming out had something to do with that?
I don't think so. I think it was their plan all along, honestly. I think they just want to monetize everything. They see what like EA is doing with their video games, where it's like, cool, we can make money from people wanting to buy a digital T-shirt for their character to wear in game. They'll give us $1 for that, and they just wanted to find a way to turn that, take that model and apply it to tabletop gaming. And I think what actually did it is, I don't know if you remember when the Twitch, like how much Twitch streamers made leaked.
Yeah.
And Critical Role was number one, and Critical Role is a D&D podcast, and they were making like millions and millions and millions of dollars on Twitch. I think Wizards saw that and said, holy shit, look what our creators are making.
Yeah, we're leaving all this money on the table for everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess as a company, like, I believe in capitalism and businesses should be able to do what they want. But on the flip side, if a business does something I didn't like, fuck them, So.
Yeah, do your own thing. Fuck them guys.
Yeah, so that's our plan. And like with Soldier Bear Studios, the whole point is for us to start finding creative ways to tell stories. So it's like I said, it's better for us to be kind of more on our own. The only downside is, like, when people search for a podcast like that, they Google Dungeons and Dragons podcast. So I think it's going to make us harder to find, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a good game plan. Just for me, I've had struggles with just marketing my podcast. I don't know. I've described my show as the worst podcast on the internet. It's kind of a joke, but I don't think what we're doing over here is too bad. But I've always struggled with like marketing because I don't have quite that fan base built in that you guys did over there.
Yeah.
So, have you had any challenges with marketing your show, or has it been pretty easy where,
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that, like, if you Google how to market a podcast, right?
Oh,
the biggest thing that comes up is, you need to get on Twitter and you need to get on social media and you need to follow all these other creators to help get your show out. And that's just the biggest load of garbage, in my opinion. I think it's awesome to see what other creators are doing and to boost each other up. But I always say that Twitter is like a flea market where people only go there to sell stuff. No one goes there to buy anything.
Yeah.
So people aren't going to Twitter to discover new podcasts to listen to for the most part. So like Knights of Degradation, we have over 1,000 followers on Twitter, which isn't a lot, but it's, something. And I honestly think if we look at it, we get the least traffic from Twitter. So that, like, likes and clicks and stuff on Twitter likes and retweets don't really equate to more downloads. That's why we started asking for reviews instead of just sharing people's stuff. We said, hey, if you listen to our show and review it, we'll do the same for you. And that actually got us way, way more traffic and way more like consistent downloads where someone would come listen and then continue to listen. The only issue with that, man, is it took up like my whole weekend listening to all these podcasts and giving them reviews and stuff. I think, with marketing, the biggest thing is just you don't really know how. The best way to honestly market a podcast is to pay for ads for your demographic that you're trying to reach. That's what is going to work. But being like a startup or an independent podcaster, it's hard to sink the money into doing that to make it worthwhile.
I've thought about starting it. Well, when Lucas was a part of the show, we were going to do an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
And have him do the podcast, and gently, throughout the show, he would just record himself, doing whatever, whether it was just like, I know there's like OnlyFans or fans like they want to see fat guys spill pudding all over their chest or, take the clothes off, whatever. But yeah, we were going to try to find a niche there and have Lucas do it and then generate revenue and audience listens that way.
Well, heck, man, you wouldn't even have to do the podcast then. You guys just do that and you're set.
Yeah, I feel like we were going down a slippery slope though, because, Lucas is the talent. It's kind of like one of those Boogie Nights things. I would be like Jack Horner and Lucas would be Dirk Diggler. And I just don't want to I just don't want Lucas to go down the wrong path.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
As a friend of Lucas, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what was your inspiration for starting a podcast?
Well, kind of a long, dramatic story, but I'll try to paraphrase it. I've loved D&D since I was little, and we actually used to record. We on an old cassette player. We'd record our sessions and then listen to them and just laugh about it later. Mm-hmm. But really, it started because of kind of COVID and being in furlough. Because when I was at the Big Blue store, I took some time off for some health reasons, and then I came back. And then 2 days after I came back is when the lockdowns happened and they furloughed everybody. And at the time, I was like, well, I have really bad asthma. My wife has asthma. We don't know what the hell is going on. So I chose to take a little bit of time off. And I just felt so useless because my wife works in the medical field. So she was going to work 16 hours a day. And I was staying at home, fucking just being a blob on the couch. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I really need to get back to how I used to be. And a part of it's where I used to work. That job just sucked the life out of me. Mm-hmm. But other things was too, I just kind of lost my identity. I didn't really play video games anymore. I didn't play D&D anymore. I didn't do any of the stuff that I like to do. I wasn't doing anything creative. And that was really it. I just had that realization. It's funny because we're called Knights of Degradation, which is kind of was that an oxymoron? Because when a knight loses their knighthood, like when a king strips their knighthood away, it's called degradation. So that's where that came from. And I remember I was talking to Mercedes, and I was like, man, I feel like a knight who used to be this great honorable person, and now I just had that all stripped away. And she asked me if there was a word for that, and I Googled it. That's how I found that out. So that's how I knew I wanted to do something creative. And then I just did that whole what am I good at? What have I spent 10,000 hours doing? And there's only one thing I've spent that much time doing, and it's playing D&D and writing and creating characters and stuff. So that's why it's kind of more of a narrative focused podcast. Mm-hmm. And that was the inspiration behind the whole business right now, honestly, is I just want to get back to telling fun, entertaining stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like your story is very similar to mine. I did it. For me, it was because when COVID locked everything down, everything that I like to do for entertainment was shut down. I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't go to sporting events. There was not anything sports wasn't even on TV, and just all this stuff that I enjoyed doing had just been taken away from me. So I needed something to kind of pass the time. So I always wanted to get into the podcasting game. It just never really took much initiative to start. And then once COVID hit and I had nothing to do with my free time, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now.
Yeah, I remember because you started yours a little bit before I started mine, I think. And I remember talking about it, and I think we were talking about mics and stuff like that, because that's where John, who worked at the store too, is who helped me kind of navigate, the audio stuff, and then he ended up coming on the show, which was kind of cool. But I always think of that because we kind of started around the same time, mm-hmm. and that's why I feel like we're podcast, our podcasts or podcast sisters or brothers or whatever.
Yeah, we're a podcast family. Yeah,
exactly. That's why I like doing crossovers and stuff like this for sure. But and I remember when we went and saw Tenet I think that's what we saw where you guys rented out the theater and stuff. So it was just, all of us. And on the way back, my wife was talking and I was like, yeah, I just like, I feel bad for Russ because as far as I know, he goes to all these concerts and goes to the movies all the time. Like he really likes to get out and do fun stuff. And you're just not able to do that because of COVID. And I think that's something a lot of people go through, but I know you personally. So I don't know. I think about that sometimes. I think it sucks. But you said you just went to a convention and stuff, and I know you went to a concert recently, I think, maybe?
It's been a little while. Concerts have gotten progressively more expensive in the last year, and I'll save that for a different episode. But yeah, I don't get to do that as much, but I'm finding other avenues to spend some of my free time. But I know for me, just you said that one of the things that you were really good at and stuff that you love to do is play D&D, and like that was my wheelhouse is like music, movies, sports, and wrestling. And when I first started this, I just made it strictly a movie podcast, and then it's kind of like I felt like I was hamstringing myself by that one topic, and I kind of wanted to branch out and talk about some of the other stuff I like too. So that's kind of where the reformat came into play.
Yeah, for sure. And that's worked out for you, right? You're in like the top. What do you like, the top in good pods or God pods or whatever?
Yeah, good pods. I mean, that's kind of like being like, I don't know, the honor roll at your school.
Well, hey man, like you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone on Good Pods listens, I mean, I apologize. I mean, it's a wonderful format to help you get discovered, but I aspire for bigger and better. But yeah, it's been kind of cool just being able to talk, and like I feel like because the whole genesis for my show starting out was just when we all used to work for Big Blue, we'd always have these really fun, engaging conversations in our warehouse about anything, and it could be something as simple like you would come in there and we would talk about wrestling. For 15, 20 minutes, and then someone else would come in and they would talk to me about MMA. And then, throughout the day, someone else we would talk about, an upcoming movie coming out. And I was like, that's kind of the vibe I was going for. It was just like kind of like rehashing that vibe, but recording it, putting it into a podcast. So
I like that, man. That was the best part of working there, honestly, is going back there. Always tried to find, towards the end, they like had to ban people from going back there because it was the only place that wasn't completely miserable for the sales floor. So
yeah, we tried to make it fun. So I don't know if you've listened to the show lately, but we try to create like a list around the episode that we're doing, and I thought for us a good like top 5 list for us to do today would be like the top 5 people. Like if you could get anybody dead or alive to be on your podcast, who would it be and why?
Oh, so, I didn't know it was dead or alive.
Well, I mean, most of like half of my list is dead people and half of them would be alive. If I had the Bill and Ted's phone booth, I would go back and get these people like, hey man, come on. I want to talk to you about whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, just imagine you have the Bill and Ted's phone booth.
Okay. Well, I immediately, my whole list just changed immediately because I even thought of some people and I was like, well, I can't pick them. They're dead. That would never happen. So that's cool. That makes it a little more fun opening up to that.
Yeah. So you're going to get Beethoven and Genghis Khan and Abraham Lincoln?
No, man.
Because I just spoiled my list right there.
No. So my favorite, well, I don't know if you want to jump into it or not.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start. I'm curious to hear who you have.
Well, if we're doing dead or alive, Rodney Dangerfield, 100%.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Let me preface first by saying, since our podcast is like a narrative podcast, because we used to do bonus episodes, but we're actually not doing those anymore. So it's all about the story and stuff. From my point of view, I'm bringing in people that can play characters in the in the show, if that makes sense. So Rodney Dangerfield, I think, is the funniest human being to ever live. I love him.
Oh, I do too.
I would love to have him come in and play a character that just insults the shit out of everybody all the time. And then talks about how much his wife hates him,
Yeah.
So for sure, Rodney Dangerfield would be up there.
I can just imagine now, like, I thought the only dragon in here was your mother. That was a horrible Dangerfield impression.
No, that's right. Yeah, she's a dragon. She's dragon ass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my Dangerfield's not very good either. But
well,
right. No one can do it like him.
Yeah. I know for me, like, my favorite baseball player of all time is Ted Williams. Not only because I find he was the greatest hitter to ever play baseball, I just find his stories very fascinating, that he took time from his career to go fight for the United States in World War II as a pilot. I would just, to be able to talk baseball with him and then like kind of shoehorn a World War II conversation. Like, he was in combat as a pilot, so it was like he was in the thick of shit. And I just think he'd be a very fascinating conversation to have with somebody, just to hear the stories, like, all these old legendary players he was able to share the field with, and just get some of his insight and experience and what it was like to fight in the World War II. Because I mean, my grandfather was in World War II, so I heard some of the stories from him from the Navy side of it. So be cool to hear a different branch of it too.
Man, like the balls it takes to be like a professional athlete and say, no, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to go fight for my country. Mad respect. I think of Pat Tillman a lot. He was in a similar issue. And it's sad because a lot of people don't even know who that is.
Yeah. I was talking to my son about Pat Tillman about a month. It was right before the NFL season ended. I was telling him about Pat Tillman. Yeah, it's just crazy that these guys would just give up that. The funny thing about Ted Williams, too, is the fact that when he came back and played, it's like he didn't even skip a beat. He was still a phenomenal hitter. Even when he came back, it's almost like hitting to him is like us tying our shoes. Like, it just was second nature to him. It was just fascinating.
That's awesome, man. I've heard the name before. But I've never seen any of his games. Baseball is really hard for me to watch. I love playing it, but I have a hard time watching it.
Yeah, he played for the Red Sox, who a friend of mine, I used to think they were okay, but then I had a friend that thought that when the Red Sox won, it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm sure it is for fans, but I got sick of hearing about how great the Red Sox were after that, so now I despise them.
Yeah, I like the Red Sox, like when I was watching it, but I was always an Atlanta Braves fan. Mm-hmm. My grandmother actually loved the Atlanta Braves, and she baked them cookies one time, like these cookies shaped like baseball mitts with little gumball baseballs in the middle of them.
Oh yeah!
During one of the games, she saw them eating them in the dugout, and she lost her shit when she saw that. So I always thought that was cool. So I was always a Braves fan, but I haven't watched baseball in 15 years. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned that. Will, who comes on the show a lot too and talks to me about wrestling, also a huge Braves fan.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, still loves them. All right. Well, who would be your number 4 then?
All right. So I'll go back to my original list then. My number 4 is Keith David, who I know a lot of people might not even know who Keith David is because I think he's a really underrated actor. But he was in The Thing. I can't remember his character's name, of course. I just said he was underrated, but I also like his role. He does a lot of video games and cartoon voice work, but I love.
He has a very distinct voice.
Yeah, if you heard it, you know exactly who he is. His role in There's Something About Mary, I love that. I think that's like prime Keith David. And I just can't not picture him screaming like, "How the hell did you get the beans above the Franks?" And
I caught a movie on, it might have been Tubi, and I completely forgot about this when you brought him up. Have you ever seen Men at Work? It has Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez as garbage men.
Yes, I love that movie.
Yeah, and Keith David is in that. And I used to get Keith David and David Keith confused all the time. They're both actors. It's just like David Keith is probably best known for fans of Major League. He's in Major League 2 as Jack Parkman, the catcher. But yeah, I used to get those two guys confused all the time.
Oh man, I see. I just said Keith David's underrated. I didn't even remember he was in that. So that's how great he is. I don't even know what movies he's in.
Yeah. Keith David's awesome. Also, bonus points. He is in the best wrestling or movie starring a professional wrestler of all time too. He's in They Live with Roddy Piper.
Oh yeah, that I do, man. I miss Roddy Piper, but
oh yeah, so do I. I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
Keith David does a lot of video game work too. He did one of the commanders in Mass Effect, which was one of my favorite video games, the first one. So and again, like The Thing, man, it's so hard. It's so easy to talk about how amazing Kurt Russell was in The Thing, but that whole cast was on fire, and I just think Keith David was phenomenal in it for sure.
The Thing, I do know, we just did a movie episode a few weeks ago. We did The Big Lebowski, where we kind of went back and did the categories and things like that. We did with that Crow, and I'm purposely saving The Thing for a crossover for your show and my show. I'm saving it for that reason.
Man, you know what's funny is I have the board game for The Thing, and I haven't even opened it yet because I wanted you to come over and check it out.
Okay, yeah,
so that's cool. That'd be next crossover.
Yeah, I was actually I went down a John Carpenter rabbit hole not too long ago, or not rabbit hole, but I just got really interested in his stuff again, and I watched The Thing, Escape from basically Carpenter's run from Halloween until They Live is pretty much, I think, one of the 3 or 4 best director runs of all time. Because you had Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Starman. All these just home runs. He's in the top 5 of favorite directors of all time, and it's cool that Keith David was good enough to where Carpenter brought him back for They Live.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I always forget he did Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know why. That just when I think of his movies, that one never clicks. I was actually, when I was little, Vampires, John Carpenter's Vampires. I was a really big fan of that. Watching it as adults a little weird because James Woods is just a psycho. But
well, actually, fun fact about John Carpenter's Vampires is Lucas and I actually love that movie because of how bad it is and how James Woods, I think Carpenter's like, hey, Jimmy, can you bring it? And since we do podcasts, we can call actors like James Woods, like Jimmy Woods.
Yeah.
So we're in the field now.
Of course.
I think John Carpenter's like, hey, Jimmy, can you maybe just dial it down to 7? And then I think James Woods' 7 is like a 12.
Right.
But I just love how ridiculously bad that movie is.
Yeah, they have vampires that purr like cats. I always hated that, but I don't know. I watched it a ton when I was little, so it just has that special nostalgia feeling to it.
Yeah, I don't know if you watch, if you're a fan of the Karate Kid or Cobra Kai, but Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3 and Cobra Kai is the vampire in that.
No, I didn't know that. I haven't watched Cobra Kai at all. So
yeah, it's a good show. It's starting to okay, it's about time to wrap this up.
Yeah,
but my number 4, speaking of The Thing, is I would love to have Kurt Russell come on the show. Simply because Kurt Russell's my favorite actor. He is the epitome of cool to me. And I listen to Bill Simmons' podcast an awful lot, and he did an interview with Kurt Russell. And they did a Kurt Russell movie. I'm trying to think of what he has a show called The Rewatchables, and they did Tango and Cash. And he was talking about the interview he did with Kurt Russell, and he just said that Kurt Russell rolls in, nothing fancy. He's got a leather jacket on, white T-shirt, and he just kind of reeks of Marlboro Reds. And that's exactly how I picture Kurt Russell being. just that epitome of cool. And I think I could sit and talk to him for 3 hours just about all the movies that he's done that I love. I mean, I can go on from I was always curious about his take on Elvis. I mean, all the way he's in the Fast and Furious movies now, which I think are awesomely bad. I absolutely adore those movies. So, I mean, I can go down his entire catalog and talk to him.
Yeah, he doesn't have a bad movie. I've never seen a bad movie with Kurt Russell in it.
No, I've always thought Kurt Russell was he could play anything. You know, he could be and be good at it. He could be a white trash handyman like he was in Overboard, all the way to being like a lawyer or like in Vanilla Sky, or like a shady government official in the Fast and Furious movies, or like a cop in Tango and Cash, or a kind of a loser truck driver like he was in Big Trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kurt Russell's just the epitome of cool for me. And I think that if I were to ever meet a celebrity, I kind of look at them as like people like you and I, but I have a feeling that if I talked to Kurt Russell, it would essentially, that episode would be like the Chris Farley show on Saturday Night Live, when he would interview like famous people like, hey, remember when you did The Thing? That was awesome. That would just be the extent of my interview.
Yeah, man, I have to agree. So Kurt Russell is my favorite actor. But
that's how you and I became friends, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's not even close. So I don't have him on my list, unfortunately, but I think there's not a better actor. And it's funny because his birthday was not too long ago.
Yep.
And where I work at an animal rescue, and every dog that we took in that day, I named after a Kurt Russell character. Oh. So we have like McCready and Cash and all them hanging out. I don't remember all the other ones.
Snake.
Pliskin, actually. I named it Pliskin.
Okay.
And Burton.
Mr. Nobody.
So, no, I didn't do Mr. Nobody. I should have.
Santa Claus.
We only had like 7 come in that day.
Okay.
So I didn't get to do all of them. But yeah, man, there's not a better, more iconic actor. And he's 72, man. He does not look like 72.
No.
And I'll be honest, not to get into more personal stuff, but he just seems like a really calm, like nice, level-headed dude also. You know, we talked about Mel Gibson earlier. He definitely doesn't seem like he's had any kind of drama or any kind of issues that have held him back. And maybe that's why he's such a prolific actor, is he just keeps his, keeps his nose clean, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of those guys that I think should have been bigger than he was. He never quite got to that top tier, like the AAA plus that he should have.
Well, does he live in Hollywood?
I don't know if he lives in Hollywood or not, but like, I don't know, it seemed like he never was like one of the elite guys. He always seemed like when he was cast in movies, like, because there's a couple movies that we did on our show where he was considered for a role, but it almost seemed like it's because they couldn't get, A, B, or C. So we'll look at D. If Kurt Russell's available, we'll get him.
Yeah.
But I also think that's probably one of the reasons, like, I think he's my favorite actor too. Is he's not like, he's the guy that you could, like, oh fuck, I'm sitting here with Tom Cruise. It's like, oh, hey, here's Kurt Russell. He wants to grab a beer with me. Awesome. I will totally have a beer and smoke a cigarette, even though I don't smoke cigarettes anymore with Kurt Russell.
No, I don't smoke either, but man, if Kurt Russell asked me to smoke a cigarette, yeah. Like, no question.
Yeah, I'll suck it up, no pun intended.
Is there a... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask who's next on your list?
Oh, we'll go to the next one. So I should have said this before, but
this isn't no order, just...
Okay, well, so we did an episode last year. I think it's when it released last year, and it was us casting a movie, like the cinematic universe of our podcast. So I purposely didn't do any crossover with that one. So I should preface that. So I tried to pick more specific voice actors and stuff. So my next one is Billy West, who Billy West is probably most famous for doing the voice of Fry off Futurama. And I know he's a musician. He does a lot of stuff, but he also did the voice for Doug, the cartoon Doug, which was one of my favorites when I was like a wee kid. But Futurama, that's probably the show that, I think everybody has a show that was like their show as they were growing up and that like impacted their lives drastically. And Futurama was mine. Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to have that person who basically was the voice of a character that was like my idol growing up or like my childhood hero or whatever. It's weird to say that Fry is my childhood hero, but that's how sad my childhood was. But just having that in the show and then being able to maybe talk with him about stuff, I don't know. It just would be really cool to have him voice a character.
Yeah. I know, I'm not really everyone tells me I need to watch Futurama because I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons, but, never gotten to watching this, Futurama for some reason. I know the character. I've seen some episodes, but never found the time to sneak Futurama in there. So
I get why people say that, but just in my opinion, it's nothing like The Simpsons. I think The Simpsons is just really it's just I don't know, joke after joke after joke. And there's not a ton of I don't want to say there's not continuity, but it's The Simpsons in my mind. It's just how many jokes can we get out? How many funny things can we get out as fast as possible? Uh-huh. And Futurama is just way more calculated. All of their jokes have these different levels of thought that go into them. And you can watch an episode 100 times. And on that 100th time, you're seeing new stuff and hearing new stuff that you didn't realize before. Mm-hmm. So I think Futurama is definitely, I wouldn't say it's the best show ever. I mean, it's a comedy show and a cartoon, but I definitely think it's the best adult animation ever made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's usually for me, I'm always, I'm ride or die with The Simpsons up until probably season 12. It's when it really starts to get on a decline. But yeah, man, one of these days I'm really bad about watching television shows. I have a list of probably 10 or 11 shows that I have either started and have not finished or that I need to start. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the program. It's just, I get burned out or I get focused on doing something else and just forget about it.
Yeah.
I'm a huge the show Mad Men. Love that show. Watched it. I've got 2 episodes to go till I'm completely done with it. But I have not revisited that show in probably 8 years. So now to be able to watch the last 2 episodes, I have to watch the whole run again.
Yeah.
And I only had 2 episodes to finish.
That's wild, man. I can relate really, really hard to that because Breaking Bad, I'm the same exact way. Breaking Bad was my favorite show while it was airing, man. I love that show. And I haven't seen the last half of the last season.
Oh,
it's honestly because while it was airing, I met my now wife. So we were hanging out all the time and she hadn't watched it. So I didn't want to have her watch it as, start with the last season. And then we just never got around to it. So I tried watching Mad Men. I just honestly couldn't get that into it. I only watched the first 2 or 3 episodes.
Mm. It's one of those shows once you get to know the characters and who they are, it gets much better. I only bought it because the Blu-rays were on sale on Black Friday one year at Best Buy, the Evil Empire, if you will.
Yeah.
I think they were $6 for the first 3 seasons. So I'm shit, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And I bought them and then just ripped through them in no time.
Maybe I'll give him another shot when I start watching stuff again. I do like John Hamm. I think John Hamm's awesome. So.
Oh yeah, John Hamm is an incredible actor who, I don't know, just has such a great range. He can do drama, and he's also, I think he's hysterical. He's one of the best Saturday Night Live hosts they've ever had. That's high praise for me.
That's cool. I haven't seen his Saturday Night Lives.
Oh yeah, he's I think he's part of the five members club now.
Oh, okay. I love it because he guest stars in so much stuff. We'll just be watching something random, and then John Hamm's there. Yeah. I was what? Why is John Hamm here? Mercedes was watching a show. It was on Netflix. This was a few years ago, and it was about this cult. that was like an underground doomsday cult, and then it turned out it was just this guy lying to all these women.
Oh, the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. That show's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, we watched that, and like John Hamm's just in that. It was like, oh, okay, John Hamm's here, everybody.
Yeah,
so I sat down and watched it because of that.
Yeah, that show is hysterical. I know. I used for a couple of weeks, anyways. She says something about her Hulkamania's flaring up, so I've used that a couple times. I know. Number 3 for me is David Bowie.
Yeah.
I've just been. I'm fascinated by the fact that of somebody in the entertainment field, usually when they try to do something new, it usually fails and they end up going back to the same formula. It happens in movies all the time. Like, it's very rare for somebody to be successful in one genre and then try something new, and it almost never works out. But David Bowie has been able to do it time and time and time again, just create some new persona or like a new like branch of who he is, and it always worked out for him. I just find that so fascinating. I think it'd be a good conversation to get into like his mindset on how he created these personas and, you know, how they came to be, you know, why change from one to another? Does he get bored with it or what? I find that would be a very fascinating conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah, man, David Bowie, like, just in general, he's one of those people you could sit down with and have a conversation. I feel like every sentence would just blow my mind.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it too. Like, I would just be.
I have him up there with Jim Morrison, who's my favorite musician of all time, but I think he's right up there as far as these people who just they seem to have like this better understanding of like existential things. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
yeah,
for sure. I'd love to just sit and talk with him, man. Or I'd rather listen to you sit and talk with him on your podcast.
Well, yeah, there you go. On Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcast.
Have you watched any of his son's movies?
Duncan Jones.
Yeah.
I've seen Moon, and he did Source Code, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did Moon and Source Code. I didn't like Source Code as much. Moon is amazing. I think
Moon is really good.
Is like the most criminally underrated movie, or in the top 10 at least. But he also did Mute with one of the Skarsgård's brothers. Mm. It's on Netflix.
There's like 9 of them, I think.
Yeah. It has Paul Rudd plays the bad guy. And it's crazy to see Paul Rudd play a bad guy. Yeah. Because it's Paul Rudd, so you want to like him, but he's just this disgusting person.
Oh, wow.
If you have time to watch it, man, that movie's fantastic. It's about this. It was a while ago, but I think it said this guy looking for his girlfriend who's disappeared, but he can't talk. He had an injury to his throat when he was younger. And it's in the future, but he's like this Amish woodworker. It's wild. It's cool because I think that and Moon, like, you can almost tell that whoever made those was inspired by some like just craziness, and that you know that all connects to David Bowie, in my opinion. So that's awesome. That's a really good one. I didn't even think of anybody like that.
Yeah, David Bowie will probably give me bonus points with my wife too. She's a huge David Bowie fan, so I didn't put it on there just for that, but if it helps out, it helps out.
Well, funny. I used to get David Bowie and Billy Idol mixed up when I was a kid because I love both of them. Yeah, but like talk about differences. I don't want to say they couldn't be further apart, but it's just their names. I'd always mix them up. So yeah, I'd be talking about David Bowie, but I'd say Billy Idol, and everybody look at me like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah, David Bowie never did Rebel Yell. Yeah. He did Rebel.
Well, yeah. See, I'm not crazy. I'm not too.
No, you're not too far off. Who else would be a dream guest of yours?
All right, I got 2 more, and I don't know what order these were in, but these are definitely my top 2.
In no order, just
and this might be this. If we do crossover, this might be one. Somebody who I loved growing up, and I actually loved him so much I listened because he narrated his own books that he wrote. I listened to those, and they were just amazing. We would like sit around the campfire listening to How to Make Love the Bruce Campbell way. And it was some of the best experiences of my youth. So definitely Bruce Campbell. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's hilarious. I would love for him to just come in and tell me about the business and like, just talk about kind of what he's been through as this like intentional B movie actor. Because I do believe Bruce Campbell could have been in some of the greatest movies or some of the most popular like Academy Award movies ever. But I think he chose to do these kind of B movies because they were more fun and they were just more him. Mm-hmm. And then I would really love for him to voice I don't know. I just love for him to voice Ash just in the Knights of Degradation world. Maybe have him teleport there somehow. I don't know. That would just be cool. But I love Bruce Campbell, and he was at the front of my mind because I think he's in Cincinnati this week or next week or sometime soon.
He was just at the Horror Hound convention. It's like a Comic-Con that they do in Sharonville, which is near Cincinnati, which my wife and I went to the Lexington Comic-Con, and we were really tossing around the idea of we were going to go to Horror Hound instead to see Bruce Campbell, but we opted not to because Bruce is doing this traveling game show / screening of one of his movies, and they're going to be in the Columbus area the end of April, I think. So we decided, all right, we'll go to this other Comic-Con since we're going to see Bruce Campbell like later in the year. So, but I absolutely adore Bruce Campbell.
He's sorry.
Oh, we went to a screening. I forget what movie it was. I forget the name of it, but basically this town recruits Bruce Campbell to help them fight these zombies. Yeah, I forget the name of the movie.
My Name is Bruce.
Okay, yeah. And we went to a screening of that where he was there. And you could not find a more charming individual.
Yeah.
And
dude, I love his movies. So it's like a running joke in my whole family that I believe that Bubba Hotep was a documentary and that it really happened. Uh-huh. So if anyone brings up Elvis or like JFK, I always talk about how actually Elvis and JFK fought a mummy together, and I take it totally seriously because that was, again, Bubba Hotep was just a wild movie. So when I was growing up, my mom worked at a video store just in a real small town. And there was just a few movies that she wouldn't allow me to check out to bring home anymore, and Bubba Hotep was one of them.
Really?
After about the 30th time, she's like, "I ain't watching this shit anymore, Cole. We're not bringing this home." The only other one, I guess, was The Exorcist, because it was real religious growing up, and then Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. That was another one. She said, "No, I ain't watching that shit anymore." But Bubba Hotep's great. Bruce Campbell. Again, I can't think of anything he's in that's bad. He's really good in like more serious stuff too. I love him in Burn Notice. Yeah, I think he's fantastic in that. Mm-hmm. So just about anything. My Name is Bruce is hilarious. So I just like that he can sit back and make satire about his own career. Mm-hmm. I don't think nowadays, especially, I don't think a lot of people have the balls to do that.
Right. Yeah. Fun fact about Bubba Hotep: when Netflix used to rent DVDs. I got the 3 DVD package, and Bubba Hotep was one of the first movies I got.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, dude, I don't know. If I know someone who doesn't know about that movie, I immediately tell them the whole thing.
Yeah, like I would. For me, it's definitely, if you're going to do a Bruce Campbell marathon, it's for me, it'd be the 3 Evil Deads and Bubba Hotep.
For sure. I think I'd like to see a Bubba Hotep 2 where the real Elvis teams up with an Elvis impersonator played by Kurt Russell.
Oh, dude, and the cool thing of it is we could do a crossover episode and have Bruce Campbell and Kurt Russell on it to promote it.
Yeah. See, we'll get them up. We'll call their agents and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, I'll just actually, as soon as we get done with this, I'll call up Kurt Russell's agent. Like, hey, man, a friend of mine's got a pitch for a movie that I think might be right up Kurt's alley.
Yeah, right. I'm sure there's a Bubba Hotep 2 script floating around out there somewhere. So.
I know they had tossed around the idea for a while, and I just think it never came to fruition. Of course, now Ozzie Davis has passed away, so he couldn't be in it. Well, yeah, he dies in that anyways, doesn't he?
I don't think so.
I
don't know.
I haven't seen Bubba Hotep in quite a long time, so I guess there's another thing I have to watch is Mute followed by Bubba Hotep again.
Oh, it's a 1-2 punch, man.
Yeah,
those movies couldn't be more different, but you'll be fine.
Yeah, watch Elvis and JFK fight monsters and zombies, and Paul Rudd be a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. They fight a cowboy mummy in that, and Paul Rudd's character is kind of like a futuristic cowboy. So there's a connection.
Oh, okay. There we go. There's the tie that binds the double feature together. I know for me, number 2, when I was talking about reinvention and how I find that fascinating, I always find fascinating too is I guess they're called Renaissance men, where they're great at a lot of different things. This guy has been an actor, an author, a podcaster. He's a professional wrestler. Chris Jericho. I would love to have him on the show just to be able to pick his brain more than anything, like just to kind of maybe help steer me in the path on how to be like time management more than anything. I don't know how this guy has time to do all this stuff.
No, you're right, man. He's always doing something, and he's doing like multiple things at a time. Like he's on a Fozzy tour while he's on Dynamite, and he's filming a movie.
Yeah. And he still does his podcast 2 times a week. I find it incredible to be like, where do you find a time to be so good at so many different things?
Yeah, that's what's crazy is he doesn't just do all those things. He's like the best at most of those things. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem saying he's the best wrestler ever just because of no one's reinvented themselves like Chris Jericho. And I don't think anyone has the stay that he's had. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact, like my wife hates music. She does not listen to music. Fozzy is one of the very few bands she'll listen to because she just loves it. Like she thinks it's great. And I do too. But, again, he doesn't just do these things. He does them all so well. And I think he has one of the best podcasts out too, honestly.
Oh yeah. His podcast is a destination listen for me. And that's what I want my show to be at some point is when it comes out, like, new episodes out. I got to listen to it right now.
For sure, man. I used to listen to it like as I went to bed every night, and then I discovered that I actually wasn't falling asleep because I was listening to the podcast, so I had to stop.
Oh, mine or his?
His, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say if you said like I listened to yours and then like when I was going to bed and fell asleep, like yep, that's the reaction that everybody says. Like, yeah, I listened to it to fall asleep.
No. I'm sorry. Now I feel bad.
Who would be your last dream guest?
So my last one is, I don't know. I always feel like nobody knows who this is, but he's pretty popular now. I first saw him in a show called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is this really weird British TV show that's about like this writer who's just super pompous and he's like making a show out of stuff he's written. And then it turns out it's the first thing that this guy ever acted in, and he was like 33, which was really cool. And then he was in a few movies, but the biggest he's in now is a show called What We Do in the Shadows, and it's Matt Berry. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that show at all.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And I know, does it have the same cast from the movie, or is it a completely different?
It's a completely different. The guys from the movies are in a few episodes, but it's a completely different cast. It's like set in the United States and stuff, and it's pretty funny. The newer stuff's not that great, but Matt Berry just makes it amazing. He's also his other big thing was the It Crowd. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but he plays the new boss's. He's the boss's son that comes in after the first boss kills himself.
Okay.
He's amazing in that, and his voice is so distinct. I think if you were to look up something and hear his voice, you would be like, "Oh, I've heard that here, and here," because there's no one who has a voice like him. in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, actually, I swore that they dubbed it. And I was like, that's not a real voice. They had to edit that somehow, but it's not. He's fantastic. He does a lot of voice work for cartoons and stuff now, too. That Disenchantment show that was made by the guys who made Futurama, actually, for Netflix. He is in that. He played the prince who gets turned into a pig. So he's pretty funny. He usually plays like a sexual deviant and stuff, but I just think I put him as like my final one just because I think that is like my dream person to work with, because I think creatively he's awesome and he does music and stuff like that too. But he's somebody who got started later in life, which kind of gives me hope, right? But then also he's just incredibly talented and really entertaining.
That's a good one. I know for me, the last one, it's really tough because it was between two comedians and who are no longer with us. Unfortunately, I bumped one of them off, but the last dream guest that I would love to have on my show would be George Carlin.
Yeah.
Simply because like he has such a wit about him, and it's like basically he has these really fascinating takes on just the simplest stuff. I have always found him hilarious, even when I was a kid and didn't get some of the stuff that he said. But I think he's just such a groundbreaking comedian, and I just think that it would just be a very fascinating conversation just to hear his thoughts on everything that I had questions about.
For sure, man. I don't know if this is the right word or if it's too dramatic or anything, but he was, in my opinion, one of the most like enlightened people.
Yeah.
Like he just could discern bullshit, and he just had I think if he was alive today, he'd basically be like, yeah, I fucking told you 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think he was a genius, and I think if he wasn't a comedian, he would have been a philosopher.
Yeah. Totally. Two of my favorite comedians come from that same era, and I was thinking it would be him or Richard Pryor would be the two guys that I was debating about, but I favor Carlin slightly more than Richard Pryor. But yeah, he has just a fascinating view of things, and I just think that would be just a great conversation to have with somebody. And that'd also be one of those instances where that show could end up easily turning into like the Chris Farley show again.
Yeah, right. Well, and you mentioned Pryor, those are like the two best comedians ever, right? So I think either one of those are good. But I will say I lean more towards Carlin too, because I just think he had this, again, he just was more enlightened. Like he would say stuff and you just be like, wow, holy shit, he's right. Which is what comedy's supposed to do. It's supposed to like open people's eyes to things, you know?
Yeah. Well, hey man, I think your list was awesome, and hopefully we can build our audience stuff to where we can get one of these dream guests. I mean, mine would be somewhat difficult because some of my guys are dead, but
yeah. Hey, you never know, man. Technology comes a long way, moves real quick. So,
or somebody comes back in a time machine, either a DeLorean or a phone booth.
No, I'd say it's far more likely you get like a deep fake, which is scary as hell because that's like a real thing now. But
yeah,
you get like a deep fake of Carlin's voice and face, and yeah, it'd be that actually might happen. So now I'm upset.
Well, if I turn it into a YouTube show, then yeah, I'll totally do that.
Yeah, right.
I'll just have fucking Lucas come on, like, hey man, just be George Carlin for 45 minutes.
Yeah, right. Put on this green suit so we can put Carlin's body over, and you can put his voice in the chat, whatever, GPT or whatever, and it'll mimic it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what mimics it, but.
Last question before we wrap this up. What are your goals for your show? Like, what do you want to see happen for your show, like that for the next year?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, we wrapped up season 1, and it's going to be coming out sporadically. Not sporadically, I'm sorry. It's going to be coming out consistently until it's over, which I think it's clocking in at like 33 to 35 episodes. So it'll run like April, May, and June is when it'll wrap up. And then we're going to be recording season 2 over the next like 2 months. instead of like meeting once a month and then recording, editing, and putting it up, doing that, we're meeting like 2 or 3 times a week for 2 to 3 months and recording our entire season and then editing it and then releasing it just to be more consistent. And the whole point of doing that is so we can free up our time to work on some other projects. So with the podcast specifically, we're just hoping for consistency. I'm not really, you always dream of being able to make enough money to do it full time and, and just have fun and not stress about stuff like that. But really, I want it to be efficient, and I just want it to be consistent, right? We have a really great story and really great characters that we're working with and that we've created. And I have enough content to go for a few more years. And I just that's my goal. I just want to finish telling our story through the podcast. So that's kind of a cop-out answer, because it's like, my goal is to just be doing it. But I think for a podcast, that's a pretty reasonable goal considering how many podcasts just kind of fade away. So.
Yeah, I read something where, what was it? It was something like during the pandemic, I think it was like 10 or 15 million people started podcasts, but none of them, like, that number drops significantly when, like, those same podcasts, like, to get to, like, the 10th or 15th episode. Like, they just start them and don't do it.
It's tough because it is like a full-time job sometimes. Like, you got to plan and you got to actually do the recording and come up with content and then edit it and release it and deal with hosting and try and market. It's legit. Like, when people, like, when I have to go do something for the podcast, I just tell people I have to go to work. Honestly, like, it's way easier to say that than to go through all the things like, oh, you do a podcast or you're recording? No, I'm going to spend 8 hours editing and nitpicking, and then I'm going to be on Twitter for 2 hours trying to get people to listen, Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question. What are the biggest challenges for you, like, doing a podcast, especially one of yours? Like, you work full-time, you're married, you have a child. I mean, and plus I'm sure you have, like, outside interest outside of that. Like, what's the biggest challenges for you, like, doing this show?
Honestly, like, without question, time away from my son. And I say that because, like, time, because kind of bad doesn't, like, time away from my wife isn't as bad because I get to spend the early mornings and the late evenings with her when my son's sleeping. But my son, he has this window where he's awake and where he's not eating or pooping, or napping. So there's not as much time in the day for him. And I'm usually at work in the mornings. And when I have to do podcast stuff in the evenings, I mean, I don't even know if I've told the guys this before, but I talked to my wife, and I legitimately told her, like, hey, I really want to quit because I feel like I'm not getting to spend the time with our son that I want to. And that is more important. It really is.
Yeah.
But, I kind of found a nice balance, especially now that editing's not taking so long. And I'm still working on it, and it's still getting to me because, like, this is getting into, like, sappy personal stuff, but, like, my dad wasn't around growing up, and I had, like, no father figures and stuff. And I know it's different because I'm working and trying to do things, but it's still, I don't know. So, it still hits me really hard. Sometimes I have to, like, just take a moment and collect myself. But that's definitely the hardest thing is knowing that time that I'm putting into the podcast is time that I could be playing with my son. And that sometimes I can shake that off and be like, well, the podcast is the road to hopefully a nice, free financial future, or however I could think of a better way to word that. But it's like a road to a better future for us. But then sometimes it's like, yeah, but right now I'm missing out on things.
Yeah.
So that's by far, man, that's really the only thing that hits me up and chokes me up sometimes. The technical stuff, like, that pisses me off and I get frustrated, but it never slows me down.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's, for me, it's just, like, working full time. I have 2 kids. One is kind of, like, getting ready to become a teenager, and then I have a 4-year-old. And it's between, balancing these hats between, the worker bee, trying to be, a good husband and spend time with my wife, trying to be a good dad with my kids. And I mean, just sometimes, like, at the end of the day, it's just, after all that, just, you leave everything on, like, I'm the type of person, I leave everything on the table. And by the time, like, it's just me. It's just, sometimes it's struggling to find the mental strength to do it. And it's not that I don't want to, it just, like, I'm just so tapped by the end of the day that I always feel like I can't give it everything that I have because I have nothing left. And
yeah, I totally understand. I like the phrase. I actually said this to one of the bosses at the Big Horrible Blue store one time, and it's that, like, like an empty bottle can't fill a glass, right? So, like, if you're running on empty, the stuff you're trying to fill is not going to work. So I totally get that. I think that's part of just being a person and, like, having, like, normal struggles. But then when you're trying to do so many things and you're trying to do them well, you know, because, like, I know you really care about the podcast and you take it really seriously, and that kind of can backfire sometimes because then, like I said earlier, it's literally a second job.
yeah, I've kind of, like, learned to, like, for me, like, kind of back off that a little bit. I look at it now, since I've started this new format, it's just a way for me to, like, shoot the shit with my friends for, like, an hour or so. Like, you know, like, I got you on, like, I know you and I still communicate through text, but we don't really see each other face to face too much or talk over the phone. So it's nice to, like, invite you on the show, and just shoot shit with you for a little bit. And, you know,
that's true. I mean, yeah, that's great.
And if people listen to it, awesome. They find our talk fascinating, awesome. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, will these guys shut up? Or I'm just going to find something else. Like, all right, that's cool too. You know, I get out of it. Like, I still got to talk to my friend for an hour.
Yeah, that's true. That's like a really positive way to look at it. John kind of tells me that all the time too. Because he's like, well, you know, he always says, like, I'm just happy to be hanging out and spending time with y'all. And I was like, yeah, that's a really great part of it too. But I still can't not think about all the extra work that goes into it during. So
yeah, I mean, I get that. Like, you know, it's still a good way to talk to my friends. But I am also, like, you know, I would kind of like to do this for, you know, a living, or at least, like, make it worthwhile, like, people are listening to it. So, you know, it's like, okay, there's a result to all the work I put into it. So,
well, I'll be honest, man, like, consistency is the biggest thing, which I know has been kicking our ass, but also adapting and changing. So, you know, I think the people who are doing this full time will tell you, like, yeah, you just stay consistent, keep at it, and adapt and adjust when you need to. And I think you've been doing that pretty well. So, and I like.
Oh, shucks, thanks, man.
Well, really, like, you went from being a movie podcast and then shifted into something that you were more comfortable with, and, like, that I think appeals to a wider audience. And like I said, I think you're doing it pretty well, and I think your relaxation definitely comes through more too. And your quality of guest is just through the roof these days. I mean, you got me on here.
Yeah, you're like the big fish. You and the missus. My missus is. I haven't had her on in a while, and then I got her back recently. So yeah, I think it's just a cool way to shoot the shit with my friends. So
yeah, that was a joke about me being a great guest.
No, not at all, man. It's you would be number 6 on my list of dream guests to have on the show.
Oh man, well, I'm here. I don't have to be on the list. I can be on the list we do 10 years. The list you do 10 years from now about the best guests you've ever had. I'll be right up there with Kurt Russell.
Hey, you know what though? I mean, if you're giving out verbal BJs, I'm just gonna go ahead and give one too. Feel free to use that on your podcast. That's what I call compliments, verbal BJs.
Okay, I will
shoehorn that into something like
a verbal BJ. I'm gonna have to figure out if I'm comfortable with that or not. I don't know.
I don't know if that fits into your world or not, but
I'll force it in there.
All right,
which is probably yeah.
Just like, may I give you a verbal BJ, milady? Your dress is absolutely ravishing this evening. I know that sucked. But.
No, that's all right. I was just like, yeah, I can make that work. That's what I was thinking. So.
All right. Well, before we wrap this up, where can people find the Knights of Degradation podcast?
Well, pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. But if you go to our website, knights.fm, it has all of our episodes on there in order. And then it also actually has some extra stuff. You get to read about the characters a little bit, just some extra stuff about the show. And we're going to be building on that through the summer. So
awesome.
Knights.fm.
Awesome. Cole, it was a pleasure having you on the show. I really enjoyed talking to you, and we need to get together a lot more often than a year almost. So,
yeah, for sure, man. We're like Halley's Comet of friends. I feel bad. Like I don't get to see you anywhere near as often as I'd like.
Well, we'll have to start changing that. So, great talking with you, man. Be sure to follow our show on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Wherever you get your podcasts. Shoot us an email if you like what we're doing or you absolutely hate it and want to let me know that our show sucks and I need to stop. You can email me at couchbrotatopodcast@gmail.com. If you do dig what we're doing here, please give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. So until next time, we will talk to you guys later.